missing, it looks like three members of the committee, and Brad had reached out to say he was going to be joining by phone, so he may be on by phone and then will join us by computer as well. So I'm going to suggest we get started. I want to respect everyone's time. We've got a lot of ground to cover on this kickoff meeting, and everyone should have received. So first of all, I think everyone knows me, but just in case, let me start by saying hello. And I'm Sarah Kerr, for those who I haven't had a chance to meet in person or virtually at the very least. I have co-chaired the Cbrc for the past 2 years, and I'm sort of standing in that role for this first meeting of our new budget year. This evening, one of our agenda items is to elect new co-chairs and a new position, the vice chair position. And so we'll do that in just a little bit. But for now, I will continue to attempt to fearlessly lead us. For those of you who are not on the committee, who are new to the committee, and we'll do introductions in just a moment, many of you will remember that I have, like many of us, I have small-ish children at home, a 5- and 7-year-old, one who I can sort of hear off in the distance doing some sort of screaming meltdown. So you never know what you're going to get with me off, with my mic off. So fair warning, but really glad to be with you tonight. I don't know who has the agenda up in front of you. If you do, it might be a good idea to pull it up. I'm just going to briefly do a quick overview of where we're headed tonight. And then, like I said, we'll start with introductions. We've got some new faces and some old faces. And so I'm looking forward to giving everyone a chance to welcome themselves. And maybe Anna would like to start by saying hi. Maybe that'll help. See all these people? They don't want to hear you screaming. So I will help you in just a minute, okay? I'll let you show me.
No, I can't watch the show. I don't want to watch
I'm going to mute for 1 second. There you. Okay.
Sarah, you can promise her I'll show off my bunny to her if she, like later on, if she's good during breaks.
It's so funny that the only moments they've been playing independently for like the past hour and a half, but as soon as it's like they know, they have radar to know when I turn my mic off. We should be okay. So Nicole, I don't know if it's helpful to share my screen right now to have it up in front, or if you had a slide with this in it and want to project those for a minute, just so everyone can see the agenda in front of them. Can you do that?
Yeah, I can do that. I did also put the link in the chat, so if anybody wants to open it up on their own, they can do that as well. But I will present my screen. Maybe. Hopefully you all can see that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. And I think we'll just keep this up for a minute as I quickly overview it, and then we can take it down so everyone has the opportunity to see each other's faces. We're doing introductions. So I'll be very brief. Again, I just want to welcome everyone. As you can see, we've got a pretty packed agenda. We are going to spend more time than I think we will in future meetings doing introductions. And as soon as I stop talking, I'm going to turn it over to all of you to just briefly introduce yourself, tell us just your name, maybe if you have a school affiliation, either current students or former students, let us know what that is. And also just share one thing you're hopeful for or looking forward to this year as being part of Cbrc. And then after that, we'll hear from Director Moore, who is our board liaison to the Cbrc this year. We're super excited to have her joining us and having her support this year. She, as many of you will know, and she'll tell you herself, is a former Cbrc member. And so she sort of knows and has an insider's view into this committee. And I think that'll prove to be really useful and helpful to us this year. So we'll hear from her, and then Cynthia will also share some opening remarks. As I mentioned, we're also going to elect leadership for this year, which is always feels a little strange to do at a first meeting, but we're going to go ahead and do that to set the leadership, the co-chair positions and vice chair for this budget year. We're going to spend a little bit of time looking at an operating guide, which I previewed in my email that went out to everyone last week. And give everyone a chance to kind of page through it and offer any questions or feedback that you have about how we'll use this as a way to sort of guide our committee and our work this year. We'll We'll spend a little bit of time after that just looking at the calendar and making sure it aligns with expectations. And I think a few of us already have some questions and feedback on that. Cynthia or Nicole will walk us through some Cbrc resources that we've pulled together in a more centralized way. It's a big goal of mine and ours this year to be more organized and have more coherence around the resources and the ways in which we're sharing information. And so this is an attempt to start out doing that. And then we will hear from PPS to give us all kind of a grounding and shared understanding in what the board goals are, and in particular, what the priorities for this, the 21-22 school year are. We'll give you a chance to ask questions about that. And then we'll end with getting some input from all of us as a committee about sort of looking beyond the board goals. A big part of our charge, of course, is sort of giving feedback and recommendations to the board on the superintendent's proposed budget. And a big part of that is the degree to which the proposed budget aligns with the board goals and is supportive of them. But we always like to start our year off with sort of zooming out a little bit and thinking about, given the current year, given the context we're in, given the board goals and what our hopes and dreams are for students, what do we as a committee want to prioritize, either in alignment with those goals or in addition to those goals. So we'll spend a little bit of time getting input on that. And then we will wrap up by 8 and no later. So I think I will stop there. And then Nicole, if you want to go ahead and stop sharing your screen, I think that would be great so we can all see each other again. And then I think we can just do introductions. And so one way, I know many of us have been on lots and lots of virtual meetings, more than we ever expected to be. And introductions can look lots of different ways. One way that's been useful and fairly easy to facilitate for me with introductions is that I'll kick off and then I will just look at my screen and name someone else and sort of kick it over to them to go ahead and do introductions, so we don't have to have any awkward pauses or people not clear on who's gonna go next. So you can just pick someone else to go after. And if you would, if anyone can't see the screen or needs help finding someone else, just raise your hand or shout out to me and I'll pick someone else. So I think I don't need to say anything more. You all know who I am, Sarah Kerr. I have a daughter who's a second grader, not the one that was screaming, that's my younger daughter, a second grader at Rose City Park Elementary, and live in that neighborhood in Northeast. And I am just really looking forward to hearing from all of our new members in particular, but really from all of you about just the experiences that you and the students in your world, or if you are a student, just hearing how just sort of couching this year and the experiences we've all had in this most unusual time. So I'm really looking forward to the diverse and new perspectives that we'll all bring to the budget committee this year. And I am going to kick it over to, I'm going to go to my top right, and that is Renee on my screen. So Renee, welcome.
Renee, you're on mute.
Just a minute. Okay. So, hello, I'm Renee Anderson, and I am a retired school teacher. That was my last job with PPS, but I moved here in 1985 to start the MESA program, which I did for nearly 10 years before I went back to the classroom. And right now I do a lot of volunteer work with the schools, and I'm a educational consultant with the BSS Network, which is a OCF program that is funding 20 programs that are run by Black leaders and work with programs to serve our children throughout the state, our Black children throughout the state.
Great.
Oh,
Renee, do you want to pick someone else? Yeah.
Rita, hi Rita, it passed, so we don't have to worry about the alternate.
Oh, am I supposed to speak now?
Yeah, Rita, maybe just quickly introduce yourself, but you're going to say a longer remarks after, so maybe just a quick intro and then you can hand it off.
I'm Rita Moore. I'm on the board. My son graduated from PPS in 2013 and graduated from college in 2017. And I'm a former CBS member. And I will pass it on to Lena.
Okay, I'm Irina Phillips, and I have 3 kids who went through Portland Public Schools. 2 graduated, 2, and I have 1 left who is senior. They all went through Grand High School. I'm 3 years on Cbrc, I think 3, the same time with Sarah. And I'm economist by education, and I do all kinds of consulting and budgeting and whatever people are needed. But the area of my expertise are electricity, natural gas, water, some environmental projects. And at school, I'm interested in bilingual programs, so Chinese, Russian, Spanish. I'm interested in TAG programs, talented and gifted, that we provide enough services for these kids. And this COVID is really taking toll of this part of that should be done. And also I'm interested in social justice and equity lens. So looking at how we budget from this kind of like perspective. So this is, and I'm at the Grand High School, so also Northeast. And I'm passing now, who is next there? Okay, Juan Samuelson. Or how, you need to correct me how I say the name. I probably butchered it all completely.
It's Han. Yeah, it's pretty close. Yeah. Hi everyone. I am also a mom of a 2nd grader at Rose City Park. But I think they're in different classes or something. I don't know. I also have a preschooler. And the reason why I interested or I got into this committee is part of it is curiosity, because I think as a taxpayer, we're all, or maybe it's just me, I don't know, curious about how money is spent. It affects everyone and not just the kids. So I'm curious as to see how we allocate funds and what kind of a process happens with that. What kind of things do we consider in the best interest of the students and our community? And also the other part, I mean, I'm just an accounting person. I'm a numbers gal, so I like looking at those things. So I thought I'd share some of my skills as well. Yeah, so that's me in a nutshell. Who am I gonna pass? I will pass it on to Roger. You hear me? Yeah.
Hi there. I guess I'm the remnant on the committee. I've been here for many years. I'm a graduate of PPS. I graduated Cleveland High School. I have a daughter who graduated Grant, and another daughter has graduated Franklin. Both my parents were teachers in the system, and covered quite a few schools in their careers. In one way or another, my family has been associated with PPS for over 50 years. So I'm anxious to meet in person everybody who is new to the committee, and I look forward to our work this year. Thank you.
Roger, do you want to invite someone else to introduce themselves next?
What would you go ahead and select? I'm not sure I'm keeping track of who's.
Sure. It gets harder as you go. Another version of this, I've asked people to turn their screens off once they've shared, but then we can't see all your faces, so that's harder. I'm going to look right below you and invite Parker to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Parker Myris. I'm one of the 2 student representatives. I represent Benson on the district student council. I have a sister in 7th grade who goes to Sunnyside Environmental School. I'm here really because I have a personal interest in budgeting and that process, but I also like to or would like to make sure that decisions that are made that affect students are made with students as opposed to just about them. Um, I'm going to pass it to the other student representative, Jackson Weinberg.
Hi, I'm Jackson. I'm a junior at Cleveland High School. I have a younger sister who's a freshman this year at Cleveland High School as well. And both my parents are also teachers. Only one of them is at PPS though. I use he, him, or she, her pronouns. And the reason I wanted to be on the CBRC, probably just to just learn and experience the process that PPS goes through of allocating funds and just figure out what PPS really prioritizes and how they budget to prioritize those things. And the only person who hasn't shared on my screen is Nicole.
Hi, I am Nicole Bassen. I'm the Director of Budget and Grant Accounting. This will be my first year, full year actively engaged in this cycle with CBRC. I also am a mom. My children don't go to Portland Public, but I do have a 5 and an 8-year-old, both of whom could arrive at any moment in time. I've also blurred out my background so you can't see my lovely dirty living room that they have all their toys in. So this is the reality that we live in these days, and but I'm excited to be here and work with all of you and hopefully help make this process as clear and help us improve on it because we live and breathe it every day, but I know that the public doesn't always have that level of involvement in it, and so being able to try and help make it as clear as possible for people who don't actually live in it every single day would be my goal. Lisa?
Hi there, my name's Lisa Selman and I'm a new member on the Budget Review Committee, and I have a son who's a freshman at Lincoln this year. One of the reasons I wanted to be part of the Budget Committee was just to get to know other people within the district, and with all the budget challenges we face, bringing my experience at the federal and local government level, as well as I've worked in project management and real estate development, and over the last 2 years have really focused on public interest design and how to be more inclusive in public participation. So I'm really excited about being on the committee this year. And I will pass it to, let's see here. Who hasn't gone?
I can jump
Judah?
in.
Has Judah gone yet?
Nope.
Okay.
I have not. So hello, my name is Judah McCauley, he, him, they, them pronouns, and I am parent of one kiddo in the area. I'm out in northeast Portland, and who is a 8th grader this year, also non-binary, they, them pronouns. Excuse me. This is entering my 4th year on the CBRC committee. Because I am a nerd about all sorts of things, and budgets is one of them. My background is professionally, I work in leading engineering and technical teams in high tech. I'm currently VP of engineering for a startup software company. And then on the volunteer side, besides CBRC, I also do some work in advocacy at the local and state level through progressive business groups for corporate revenue reform and education funding, and then also advocacy work around sex positive and appropriate sexual and mental health resources in schools. Those are some of my big passionate topics, but the biggest one is really in kind of evidence-based approaches to budgeting and outcomes and taking meaningful steps towards reducing disparities in outcomes in our education system and ensuring more transparency and bringing more people into the process. Because historically, I'm a mini generation Oregonian, and I've watched the disinvestment in education go through from the generation before me through my generation and now to my kids' generation, and then the increased, gap in educational attainment from a lot of subgroups of students through there, and it's appalling and unsustainable. So I feel that it's my job to do whatever I can to help counteract that. So doing what I can.
Great. Judah, do you need help identifying
Nope,
someone?
I was going to say, let's go ahead, and I don't think we've talked with Renee Anderson yet.
Renee was our first after me.
Oh, Renee was our first. Okay.
Right.
Well, I know
Yeah.
Yasuri just joined, but I think we also have Junho, which I think is staff. Correct? Do we have anybody who's not staff or?
Yep.
Oh, Terry. We have not spoken with Terry Proctor.
Terry, we've got Jennifer, and I think Leisha joined, and Brad. So we've got a couple folks left.
Oh,
I
yeah.
have the benefit of the roster in front of me.
I was
so
like,
don't
Brad just snuck in. Yes.
Why don't we
was
go
a
to
quiz.
Jennifer next, and then
Okay.
if it's easier, I can just call on folks since we're running. It's hard
Thank
to identify folks at this point. Yeah.
Great. Hi, my name is Jennifer Samuels. This is my second year on Cbrc. I am an education nonprofit director here in Portland, and I'm the mom of two kiddos, one who graduated from PPS in 2013 and a current sophomore. So we are all living distance learning. My hope for participation this year in Cbrc is that we can find a way to more closely, this might be similar to what Judah said, but that we can find a way to more closely tie what our recommendations are to achieving the racial equity outcomes that the district has set for us. And I use she, her pronouns. And I think next was it Leisha?
Hi, good
Hi,
evening. Yeah, my name is Leisha. This is, I can't believe it, I guess my second year on the committee, which it just seemed like yesterday was the first meeting. So yeah, I am a product of Portland Public Schools. I went to Boise Elliott, Harriet Tubman, and then Benson. I'm a former educator in the DC public school system. And currently I am the equity manager for the Bureau of Development Services for the city of Portland. And I'm excited to be back to work with you folks and beginning a new year.
Great. Thanks, Leisha. I think Brad.
Quickly, Leisha, are you James Posey's daughter?
I am.
You are a former student of mine.
Mesa. Yes.
You were in the Mesa program.
Yes, we just talked about you the other day.
Oh my goodness. I love it. I love that connection. That's awesome. All right, Brad, I think you are the last, at least someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the last committee member to introduce yourself. So welcome. We're just saying.
Thank you so much. Sorry,
my God, what we're doing. So jump in.
Sorry, I'm late. Hi, everybody. Brad Nelson, second year on the committee, daughter in 9th grade and son that is in 5th grade. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this year. It was very interesting last year. There's a lot of ups and downs, I think. I think there was a lot of very positive work that took place in the fall and then January and February, and everybody was super excited about a lot of things that were going to happen. And I think some of that excitement, I think, still exists. It's easy for us to, basically assume that the world's gone to a bad place. But I think that there are a lot of positive things that are going to come out of both online learning and kind of the general process that PPS has gone through. So I remain an optimist, and I'm hopeful that actually I'm very, very much looking forward to another year of doing this and getting involved in the process. And I don't know if Cynthia's here, but hopefully she didn't mute and start swearing when I jumped on the call. But I appreciate all the help from Cynthia and from Claire and all the listening that PPS has done over the last year or so. So looking forward to this.
She reappeared on the screen to wag her finger at you or do something.
Oh,
She would never do that. Great. Cynthia, I'm going to hold off on having you introduce yourself because I'll do that in the context of some remarks that I know you wanted to give. And I know we have Yasuri with us as well, who's a part of the PPS team. Yasuri, do you want to quickly introduce yourself to the group if you're able to? Okay, well, Yasuri, you're welcome to jump in at any point. Yasuri makes a lot of the magic happen. She does a lot of the behind the scenes work to make sure that we all know where we need to be and have our materials. And she's incredibly supportive and has been a pleasure to work with. So Yasuri, feel free to chime in at any time if you do want to say hello. I'm going to invite, did we miss anyone? Please shout if we did. Okay. I'm very used to Zoom and not Google Meet. So I love that people introduce themselves with their pronouns. I really appreciate that. And I think that's a good norm for us to have. And one way to do that each time is to rename ourselves, use and add our pronouns. I just don't know how to do it in Google Meet. So if anyone else does and can put those instructions in the chat, that would be super helpful. And then we can just sort of establish that as a norm moving forward. I think that would be great. Can you all hear me okay? I'm getting a message from Hong that you can't hear.
Yeah, I can hear you pretty good. Yeah.
And then Terry, I'm seeing your message too, Irina. Is Terry, Cynthia, or Nicole, is Terry helping on the PPS team? And Terry, I don't think we know each other. You're welcome to introduce yourself as well if you'd like to. Thank you for alerting me, Irina.
Terry Proctor is our staff, and he is responsible for putting everything on the web, so he is my hero.
Great. Okay. Rita, I'd love to, or Director Moore, be more formal. I'd love to turn it over to you for a few minutes to give some welcoming remarks. As I framed it to you, just the charge, I think would love to just hear what your hopes and dreams are for the committee as our liaison to the board, and really what you as a representative of the board want us to hear as we kick off our work this year.
Thank you. So first off, I want to thank everybody for being willing to do this. I was on Cbrc for 6 years, so I know the commitment that you're making, and I really appreciate your willingness to devote the time and energy to helping the board and the district build a budget that is as aligned as humanly possible with the goals and the vision for the district. So I guess I just wanted to kind of highlight the idea that so as a member of the board, what we're hoping Cbrc can provide to us is another set of kind of eyes and ears on the budget as we go through the process. You are connected to the community. You have a lot of you have kids in PPS. I do not anymore. And I know when I was on the committee, watching my own kids' experience played a big role in how I interpreted the PPS budget. So you're able to bring that experience and your perspective as a kind of a civilian. And what we would ask is that you make yourself familiar, if you're not already, with foundational documents that we're trying to use as the anchor for all of the decision making, both budgetary and policy and all the rest of it. So it starts with the vision of the district. If you haven't kind of delved into that yet, I strongly recommend that you do. It's we have a very aspirational vision for what the district can and should do for students, and it's pitched around the idea of the graduate portrait. So the kinds of skills and dispositions that we hope all PPS graduates will have as they enter the world of adulthood. And then we have the strategic plan, which is kind of operationalizing the vision, and then the board goals. And the board has established four principal goals that we are using to evaluate the superintendent. And the idea is that if we use those goals as kind of the measure for our evaluation of his performance, then it will cascade down throughout the organization. And the four goals are third grade reading, fifth grade math, eighth grade being prepared for high school, and at the high school level, students being prepared for college, career, and citizenship, adulthood. And then we have two other documents. The first is the ResJ lens, the racial equity and social justice lens that we're using. We're trying to use consistently and with fidelity to look at pretty much every decision that we make. And then budget principles. And the budget principles document actually came out of the Cbrc. And it happened on my watch. So Roger and I were on Cbrc when we produced this thing. So kind of my baby a little bit. Those are the documents that we would like you to use as you look at the budget proposal that comes out of staff. And basically we're asking you to kind of keep us honest, to look at the budget as it's being built and, when it's presented, and help us see any places where we might be diverging from these foundational documents and the goals and the principles and all that. I would encourage you to ask questions and to get into as many weeds as you're comfortable with. There are a lot of things that we would like to do that we cannot do because we don't have enough resources. And what's important to keep in mind is that the budget is a moral document. And we PPS for a very long time have talked a good show. And for a long time, we weren't kind of walking the talk. I'm hoping that we are more, but governing is hard. There are never enough resources. There are going to be even fewer resources this year and probably in the next biennium. And every single decision we make is a decision to do something and not to do something else. And it's those dilemmas that we most need help with. We've got to be grounded in reality, but always trying to kind of maintain our commitment to the lofty principles that we talk about all the time. So there you go. That's my speech about the highfalutin mission of Cbrc, and I'm hoping that we can continue the practice that started really last year, where there's much more contact between the committee and the board. And it, when I was on CBRC, and really up until last year, it was, you guys were kind of a separate entity, and you appear and give your report pretty late in the game, and that's, and you either yell at us or not, and then you go away and we do whatever we're going to do. Last year, we started to have much more contact during the budget building process, which I think was really helpful. So I'd like to continue that. And if you have ideas about how we can do it better, let me know. So there you go.
Great. Thanks, Rita. And I see a question from Roger coming in, and I'm going to try to lump questions in ways that don't get us too bogged down as we go, so we try and stick to the agenda. But Roger, I think I can quickly take that, and maybe Cynthia, you can pick up on it, because I think we were going to invite you next to give a couple quick remarks before we jump into the next part of our agenda. But first of all, Director Moore, thank you so much. I share all of those hopes and dreams. I hope that was helpful for everyone else to hear. And I think maybe what we can do during our final chunk of time tonight is, in addition to thinking about what do we as a committee really want to prioritize this year, we can include in that brainstorm how we want to work, both as a committee in and of ourselves, but also collaboratively with the board. And another thing Director Moore and I have talked a little bit about is, which I don't think you mentioned too much about, is just the opportunity that this committee has to be even more inclusive and participatory in terms of the community that we represent. And that goes two ways, both making sure that we're leveraging our positions to bring forth what we're hearing from the communities that we represent, and also going in the other direction, thinking about ways that PPS and the board can share information about the budget in ways that feel more useful and frankly understandable to a layperson. I think we communicate and budget speak so often, those of us who are in the know, it makes sense, but for the average citizen or community member, that is just, it's a foreign language, and that actually I think works at odds with our goal of having a more inclusive and participatory district where we have transparency and where there are opportunities for anyone who's a constituent or a stakeholder in the system to both have clarity around, like, here's what we're trying to do for kids, but also, like, here are the resources we're putting behind it. And like Rita said, the budget is a moral document. It's a roadmap. It tells the story of what a system cares about and what it values. And so I think it's a way, the transparency helps us as stakeholders do an important job, which is hold our leaders and our public officials accountable for those goals. And so I think there's an opportunity for us, to the extent we want to take it up as a committee, to think about what we can do to promote that sort of two-way transparency and communication this year. All right, Cynthia, I would love to invite you to say a few words of welcome and anything else you would like to share, and then we'll keep going. And Cynthia, can you also speak to the genesis of the operating guide to answer Roger's questions in your opening remarks? Thank you.
Of course. Thank you, Sarah. Since Roger is so important to me, let me address his question first. So the operating guide is new to the CBRC. It's a marriage between the board charge for the CBRC and the bylaws work that we did last year. And I also incorporated into its guidelines to comply with the Oregon budget law. I want to make sure that we don't lose that. It's very important as we are a public entity. We can do a lot of things as long as we stay within certain guidelines, and we all know that. Did I answer your question, Roger? And I'll get back to this. As Roger has more questions later. And so tonight, really, I have an exciting news to share with you that I am going to be retiring from PPS at the end of this month to be a full-time caregiver for my mother who has dementia. As I hear what you're saying, as many years that I have done this, I love the work. I love you guys. And I'm so grateful for the relationship I have cultivated with you all and the work that we have done together. I have learned a lot from you. And until my successor is named in the new year, our budget director, Nicole Bassen, will be available to support you. And I know she would do an outstanding job for you all. And as you continue to navigate through the time of the pandemic, the many challenges we are facing in 2020 are nowhere near the end. I appreciate your time, your commitment to partnering with the district in serving our students, particularly the underserved ones. And I also appreciate the fact that we are making a commitment to include students' voice. It is very important that we have their voices. I wish you well. I wish your family well. I'm rooting hard for you. And I would like to leave you with a quote from Confucius, just because of who I am. The pain of parting is nothing to the joy of meeting again. So I hope our path will cross again someday. Again, best wishes to everybody. I am going to turn it over to Sarah on the next agenda item.
I don't quite know how to follow that news, and certainly the quote from Confucius. I feel like I need to just stand down at this point.
This is really a bittersweet decision for me. I love the work. I love you all. I love the district. I just have to take care of my mother who has dementia and who can walk in anytime. I don't have the little ones at home anymore. I have a 90-year-old mother with dementia and just got out of hospice. So thank you.
Well, we are so appreciative. I don't ever purport to speak on behalf of anyone, so I'll just represent myself, and I will probably represent the sentiments of so many others on here who have had the good fortune to work with you over the last few years, and just want to really appreciate you and say how much we will miss you. And I certainly think, as Irina said, mothers come first, right? At least that's what I hope my kids say about me one day. So we really, really appreciate you. And
I want to show this to Parker. I hope to see him on the tennis court when the pandemic is over. The score is my last match, a score which I lost in the tournament. It was 5-7, 6-3, 7-5. So Parker, I know you will beat me. We'll see you on the tennis court.
Thank you, Cynthia. There was a letter to CBRC, or not the BESC, for you if you've gotten that yet, or if not, it's awaiting you.
Thank you.
You're welcome, and it's been a joy to work with you. You've really set a precedent for me as a student, and encouraged my voice, and sort of you've provided a space to where I felt comfortable in conversations about numbers and about budgets, which isn't always the most learner friendly environment, but
great.
Thank you so much, Cynthia.
You're welcome. I encourage all students to be very curious. You are our customers. You have the right to know what we are doing for your education. So always remember that, even when I'm long gone. Back to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Cynthia, and we'll set up a tennis match at some point.
Okay. I look forward. I would like to be a spectator. Great. Well, sorry for anyone's nausea as I relocated to be further away. No matter where I go in my house, everyone seems to gravitate toward me, so I have to run away sometimes. I'm sure there's lots of us experiencing that at this moment. I'm going to move us on to our next agenda item, which is the election of leadership positions for CBRC for the upcoming year. This year, we are moving from having a chair and co-chair position, which for those of you who are part of the committee, last year, I served alongside Thomas Lanham, who didn't renew his membership or committee appointment this year for personal reasons. So we are sorry to see him go as well. He was a great leader and he'll be missed. So this year, I think in light of, for a number of reasons, we thought it would be valuable to shift to the co-chair position and add a vice chair. I think we all are just recognizing the moment we're in and the fluidity with which life is happening and anticipating, people having different needs and conflicts over the course of this year. Felt like it would be valuable to have another person sort of on hand to help facilitate, plan, and execute our meetings. And so our goal in the next chunk of time is for us to just go ahead and nominate and hopefully elect for those positions. And so I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor.
Actually, Sarah, before you get into that, would you mind doing a little overview of like what are the duties? Like just in case we want, like people are like, that sounds like too much, or like, oh, that sounds like an excellent idea.
Yes, I would be glad to do that. And I feel like I'm about to be joined by someone who's hopefully not going to scream too loud. So hold on just one second. Cynthia, actually, if you wouldn't mind stepping in and giving a quick overview for me, that would be great. I'm going to have to attend to something real quick. That would be helpful. Thank you.
You are muted, Cynthia.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So to be in the position, not only that you have to attend meetings, you also have to make sure that there will be a report to the board at the end of the time. That is usually around sometimes in May. That the CBRC is making a recommendation to the board on the superintendent's proposed budget. The CBRC also review the local option levy of the district numbers and report to the board whether or not it is what is supposed to be. So there is some responsibility of facilitating, making sure that you get input from members of what needs to be put on the report. Staff will support every step of the way. However, staff is not a voting member. Staff will provide any answers you have, but it is the report of the committee, and it is the chair and the co-chair who will be joining in delivering the reports to the board in May. Now, the vice chair serves for the purpose of when one of the co-chairs not available. It is always good. It takes the reason the board last year changed the terms from 2 years to 3 years because the board recognizes that it takes that long for a member to really understand the process, understand how the rate of returns on investments for the budget, how that all of that works. And the same is with the vice chair. I think if we have the vice chair, that will help with a person stepping in when a co-chair or, should we have the two positions available. So did I answer your question? Sarah, please help see if I missed anything. Basically, it's, if nothing else, it's a responsibility of making sure that you have that reports to the board on the proposed budget of the superintendent and the local option levy.
I think you were much more comprehensive than I would have been. So it's good that I had to run away from my child and was able to turn it over to you. That's excellent. Any clarifying questions about the positions before we go ahead and open the floor for nominations?
I'll also say that one of the things that we started doing really last year that I believe worked well is helping funnel questions from the larger CBRC into staff and the board and getting them to the right people within the administration to generate answers before the next meeting. And so kind of wrangling that communication and making sure that we had responses to all the questions and such, so that staff was not hearing from like 12 different people independently and not sure what to tell for whom. So organizing the meetings, organizing communication, making sure things are published on time, and then facilitating the meetings.
You're absolutely right. And one of the things that I'm most proud of last year is our ability to receive the questionnaires, get the answers, get them to you all in the timely fashion, and report to the board. Now, can you imagine the timing? We're constantly working, and it's like a concert in the background, especially when we have to work offline. But we, the staff, everybody did extremely well, and I only expect that model to be even better in the years to come. I'm done with the marketing for.
How are we going to do that without you, Cynthia?
I don't know. Well, we can't hear you. You're on mute, but we'll.
I'm rooting for everybody. I will be there in spirit.
Great. So, so this is my first time facilitating this nominations process. So I'm sure I'm going to be clumsy and probably not do it according to how we're going to. So I'm going to look to others for guidance if and when I need it. But I think what makes sense is to just go ahead and get nominations out for the chair and co-chair first, and then we'll see if we have seconds and then can affirm. And Renee, I see your question, so I'll have you jump in just a second, and then we'll do the vice chair position. But Renee first, please jump in.
I just want to clarify, you're co-chair right now?
I am sort of pseudo. I actually don't know if from a, I don't even know what to say, like bylaws perspective, I officially am. I was sort of legacy from last year. I co-chaired last year. And so I just carried forth that responsibility to help smooth the transition over the summer and into this first meeting. So I guess I officially am still in the co-chair position, and my Thomas Lanham, who was also co-chaired along with me last year, did not return to CBRC this year. But yes, that is the case.
So we need 2 co-chairs and 1 vice chair?
We need 2 co-chairs and 1 vice chair.
Thank you.
If I remember my Constitutional Congress classes and stuff, it'd be you are the outgoing chair who, if nominated and coming in, would then be also an incoming chair.
That seems right.
That sounds fancy.
Yes. Much better than the job I did. Renee, go ahead.
You've been nominated to be co-chair again. Okay, that's my question.
Yes. Sorry, I missed the first part. Yes, I can. Okay. So why don't we go ahead and open to the floor for nominations for the co-chair position, for co-chairs, I should say. So 2 individuals.
Well, I'll totally jump in and nominate Sarah again. She did a fabulous job last year, and I think she would do a fabulous job again.
And I second.
Great. Thank you. We have a second. And then, Nicole, do we need an all in favor for this or not? I didn't get a response from you earlier.
I'm not 100% sure on that process.
I would suggest in a situation like this, unless we have more than 3 people who are willing, we hit the point where we nominate, second, and vote on a slate. So you get to all 3 people, unless there's more than 4 people, unless there's more than 3.
I think that's the best recommendation. Yeah.
Great. So great. So we have Sarah is nominated, myself as one nomination. Do we have other nominations for the co-chair and vice chair position?
I would nominate Judah as a co-chair and Irina as a vice chair.
Great. I'll second Judah as co-chair. I'll invite others to jump in.
You're on mute, Judah.
Oh, I was actually answering my kid's question whether we needed
Oh.
a rabbit on the call. Because they were going to come hand me a rabbit to show off. So, like, if we need a bunny break, I can make that happen. Otherwise, let's continue with the nominations.
Nice. All right.
I would love to see your bunnies because I actually have 3 at my own house right now.
Okay, Jackson, at the end, let's have a bunny break.
Okay.
Sweet.
And I'd like to nominate Parker Myris as vice chair.
Great.
That's an interesting question. I assume that that's totally fine. Are student representatives part of the normal CBRC membership, or are they special positions? I don't actually know.
Yes. And each member of the CBRC have the same voting right. So the students do have that right. So
Sweet.
far, we have 2 nominations for vice chairs, Irina and Parker.
Second.
Can you clarify the second for who the second is for, Renee?
It's for Parker. I apologize. I don't know Irina, so but I do know. I know Parker. He doesn't know I know him, but I know Parker.
I think you also have to call to ask if anybody declines the nomination. If you've been nominated and you don't want to do it.
Correct. That was exactly where I was headed next. So thank
Sorry.
you. No, that's perfect. No, now we know who to go to for these in the future. And I should have called you for tutorial ahead of time. Great. Do we have, before we do that, do we have any other nominations, either of others or self? Okay. Okay. Let's go ahead and give the nominees a chance to affirm or decline the nomination. I think I'm up first, and I would accept the nomination, the opportunity. Judah?
I will accept that, especially since Rita says she wants bunny time too. So, like, I'm being bribed with rabbit love to continue my membership in this committee.
Great. Irina and Parker? Irina, do you accept the nomination?
Nobody second me, so I have no idea where I'm hanging with with Roger's nomination, because you only second Judah, but you didn't second me. So I don't know what that means. So who is the master of the protocol? Where I'm hanging with this nomination, but no seconding?
We need the person to accept the nomination. Then we need to have second.
I will second the nomination for Irina, presuming you are accepting.
One has nominated me and nobody approved me for nomination. Okay. Yeah, I'm fine with it. I can serve as a vice chair.
I'll also accept my nomination as vice chair. Thank you.
Oh, there's co-chair.
So I'm going to look to either Jennifer or Cynthia or Nicole for advice here on the procedure. And I apologize for not having this down pat ahead of time. But I think we'll have to take it to a vote for the vice chair position. Is that right, Cynthia?
That is correct. We can either have a vote for a vice chair, or we can have 2 vice chairs. This is entirely up to the committee.
And do we have enough voting members present to elect?
I think we do. I believe we do. Yes, based on my
Mhm.
count of the roster.
Yeah.
You have a
Um,
quorum,
So-
and we can vote with a quorum.
So-
So that's not a question. And let's embrace the notion of having co-chairs, of co-vice chairs, and let's move on.
Okay, I'm going to make a nomination. I would like to nominate Sarah and Judah as co-chairs, and that we have 2 vice chairs this year, both Irina and Parker.
Great.
Second.
Okay.
And then we could ask for unanimous consent because I think we got it.
Great. Okay, thank
Well,
you.
then we do for, against, abstain.
Okay.
So you
vote
would
for-
call for all in
for that
favor.
slate. Yes, for that slate, that nomination that you just made, correct? Okay, great. So all in favor, please say yes or raise your hand.
Yes.
Okay. All against? Any who abstain? Sorry, I did not vote. I was a yes. Okay, I think that was a unanimous yes by my count, unless someone saw differently. Okay, great. So we have our slate approved. Thank you very much. We will get this down pat in much better shape next year. That was probably harder for me than all of you, but was challenging. So thank you for bearing with me. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on. I actually think we're okay timing wise because I don't think that we need to spend the time we have allotted to both the future meeting conversation and the resources. I think those will be very brief. So first of all, very excited to have this nice slate of folks on board to help facilitate this group this year. So thank you all for agreeing to participate, and I'm really looking forward to working with you and working with the current committee more broadly. The next order of business is to preview and hopefully adopt, although I'm not sure how formally this needs to be done. And Cynthia, again, or Nicole, I'll look to you to jump in here. I'm not sure that the adoption requires us to sort of have a formal vote approval or not. I don't think I ever got a clear response on that. But Roger, to answer your question and to build off of what Cynthia shared previously, for those of you who were part of the committee last year, you spent a little bit of time working on a set of draft bylaws, which at the time were a way for us as a committee to establish some norms and operating procedures, again, in the format of bylaws, and help codify just how we were operating as a committee. Because, and Cynthia, you'll jump in and correct me if I don't have this accurate, I think because we are a subcommittee of the board, it made more sense moving forward to move away from having bylaws and towards having and adopting an operating guide to sort of serve in that way. And so over the summer, PPS staff worked together with me to develop this draft operating guide to try and codify some of what we had previously captured in the bylaws into this format. And we had shared this previously. I'm hoping that many of you have had a chance to look at it. I thought it might be helpful, and I can certainly share my screen. We can put it up and sort of briefly step through it together, although I don't want to, I don't think we need to take too much of our meeting time to sort of thumb through the operating guide itself page by page. I think the goal for this agenda item is to make everyone aware of the operating guide itself, to give everyone a chance to ask clarifying questions about its genesis or how we anticipate using it this year. And I think actually what I might suggest, Cynthia and Nicole, is that rather than adopting the operating guide tonight, we all take time to look at it together to surface and ask and answer questions. And then we sort of move the formal adoption of it to our next meeting to give everyone a chance to look at it in more detail and make sure that we're all comfortable with it and make any revisions we need to.
I think that's a great idea, Sarah. That way, then we can answer any questions from now until then. And also with the resources guideline, then folks can really see where it's come about, that we come up with the operating guide that we have. I think that's a great idea.
Nope. We lost there.
I was like, I guess that I'm now suddenly on the spot as co-chair. Oh heck, what do I do now? I wasn't expecting. I was like, I wasn't expecting to take power this quickly.
I went to turn my mic back off of mute and exited myself from the meeting. Sorry, user error. It's been a long day. I don't know how many of you have sat on Zooms for many hours today, but I certainly haven't. So it's been a long day of Zoom. We can do this one of two ways. We can project it on this screen and do a screen share so that everyone's looking at it and thumbing through it together. But I'm guessing many of you have access to the link that was sent in the email. And if you can go ahead and pull up the operating guide and have that as a resource for a conversation. That might be easier. My preference is to be able to see everyone's face and not just a big screen for a committee like this. And Nicole, it looks like you just put it in the chat, the link in the chat. So if folks want to pull that up, I think rather than me talking through it, I would love to just open it up to the floor for questions about either the genesis, about the substance, and I see Audrey already put one in, and also just input on anything that you think strikes you as, to borrow Roger's term, incongruent or missing from this operating guide. And please go ahead and just either raise your hand if you have a comment, come off mute, or put just note in the chat that you'd like to say something, and I'll monitor that. I actually think I lost the chat history when I logged out, and so the only thing I see is Nicole. So Roger, do you want to start by I know you had a question or a comment. Do you want to kick us off with that? I can't see your comment anymore myself, unfortunately.
Well, without going through the entire document, I wasn't prepared to do that particularly. But the local budget law distinguishes jurisdictions by size, population. Portland is one of those that is 200,000 or larger. So therefore, it is not under the requirement of having a budget committee matching the number of the governing body, and the governing body and those individuals become the budget committee for that jurisdiction. In lieu of having a budget committee, Portland Public Schools adopted the preference of having an advisory committee, Cbrc, and created it. It originally was called Citizens, and then it was changed to Community. The spirit of the budget law is one to involve citizens in the budgeting process and to make them fully informed as to what budget decisions are made. And it has long been my aspiration for CBRC to function in like manner to a budget committee in a jurisdiction that's smaller than Portland. And at times we seem to have been evolving that direction. And then if one reads through this document, it's drafted in such a way that once we render our opinion on the draft budget, superintendent's proposed budget, we're done. Well, as you know, last year, the budget that was adopted was acknowledged by the board itself that it was out of whack from the very get-go until the legislature met and decisions were made by it. And so then we were assured that we would somehow be involved in future amendments to the budget that was just passed, because it was acknowledged that that was going to be necessary once the legislature had made its decision. You read through this, but we have no role after whatever is adopted. Traditionally, school boards have always amended their budgets necessarily. They're not fixed in stone, and there's reason to be changed. And that's the reason why I was asking Rita. It was in that she was on CBRC when certain principles were adopted as to our role, and whether or not she had played a role in the drafting of this operating guide, or whether the board has been involved, or whether it evolves through staff, because it mimics one staff member's point of view quite strongly, and I overall I find it disappointing. So anyway, I'm willing to learn, and willing to be convinced otherwise.
Let me speak to what I know is that the document has been shared with others throughout the district, and I know Director Moore has a copy of it. Whether the board actually reviewed it, I do not have that knowledge, and and I think we can do it in some ways. For example, we can, as a committee, review and deem that this is appropriate, and then the board can also give input through Director Moore. I think as a board liaison, Director Moore has some knowledge and authority to make certain decisions on behalf of the board. And please correct me if I'm wrong, and this is just from my past experience. And to reference to Roger's comment about it seems like the job of the CBRC, which is the advisor group for the board, ends in May. And Roger is absolutely correct about that in terms of in a normal situation. The last year, it wasn't normal at all. And if you recall, we had subsequent meetings after May. We had one in June and July and August. And I think the commitment of the district is to continuously keeping the committee in the loop, and for transparency purposes. And also the districts continue to take questionnaires after May. The reason you see it's kind of end in May because that's when the board would take the report, the recommendation from the committee, and approve the budget. Once the budget is approved, that is the budget that was approved at that one point in time. If I have time, I would love to have some conversations about amendments later, and I'm sure my successor will continue on this work to walk you through the subsequent processes after the budget is approved, adopted, and then becoming the working budget in the year of the budget.
Great. Thanks, Cynthia. I think the spirit of what you're bringing with these comments, Roger, is well taken, because I do think we've had some. I mean, certainly the past year was an unusual one, to say the least, in terms of all things, including the budget cycle. and process of adopting and then amending the budget. I think what you may be alluding to, although I certainly don't want to put words in your mouth, is I think, and I don't know if it belongs in the operating guide or is just something that we need to sort of center ourselves on as a committee this year, and working in close partnership with the board and with PPS staff, is wanting to have as expansive and inclusive of a working relationship as possible, and moving beyond this committee being sort of perceived and used as sort of a one-directional sharing of information to a multi-directional collaborative. We are working in partnership in service of advising the board on the superintendent's proposed budget, and that isn't a one-time, once-a-year check the box kind of thing. And I know Director Moore, I think the spirit of your comments alluded to this earlier. And I do think that this committee is, has not always felt that it has been perceived as more of a consultative body rather than we're delivering information to you to sort of check a box and comply with a requirement. And so I would love others' reactions and specific questions or thoughts on the operating guide. And I think one thing I would recommend is that we all look at it between now and the next meeting and come prepared with any specific feedback or amendments we propose. But any other broader comments now?
Yeah. I'd like to jump in and say that, reviewing the budget or reviewing the operating principles, I think is a good idea. What I feel is going to speak most directly to Roger's point, which I think is a good one, is that the problem with reviewing those operating principles is what the operating principles leave out. He's talking about the negative space there, and the differences between other things and the way things could have been or possibly have been done in the past, which there's no way for the document to reflect that. And especially with a substantially new committee membership, we would be remiss in not digging into that much more fine grain, because just reviewing those operating principles in isolation doesn't give you any context for any of those things. So for instance, some of the things that Roger's talking about, I just pasted a link to the Oregon School Board Association document on this very subject. And I'd actually like to invite Rita to speak to a point she put in the chat that I'm unaware of, and in 4 years I've been here, I've never heard before about the TSCC, because that's something that's going to come up and is an acronym everyone should know, because they are possibly the most obscure governmental body that exists. And such. But it was my understanding that that is where our budget then goes to be approved by. It must go in front of the TSCC for their vote, but a budget, a citizens community budget review committee under the OSBA guidance actually comes before that. And so TSCC could not be serving in that role, that we are supposed to work with and advise. The budget review committee is supposed to work with and advise the school board and be in smaller districts comprised of members of both bodies, and then vote on those recommendations for policy. But then the approval from the TSCC would happen after that. So I don't understand your point, Rita, because I don't see any way the TSCC could act in that fashion.
Let me just clarify about the TSCC. The TSCC is a branch of government only within Multnomah County. So in June, so the process of the budget by law had three levels. One is the proposed budget from the superintendent. Then the board, as a budget committee, after receive the reports from the Cbrc, will approve the budget as proposed or as changes, as recommended changes. Then
One clarifying thing there for those who haven't seen the board, school board members, they actually gavel in and out as different committees during this time. They're saying, okay, we're going to meet right now as the school board, and then they say, okay, we're going to gavel out of this. Now we're going to all meet as the budget committee, and then do all the budget things, and then go back to be. It's very odd unless you've been there. So that's what Cynthia is referring to.
precisely.
And the budget committee is the only committee where that happens. It's governed by statute.
And then after the board as budget committee approved the budget, then in June, the TSCC and its commissioners will do a public hearings. And then after that, the board, again, as budget committee, will adopt the budget. So, and there will be in the resources page later that there are several steps there for the board as budget committee make changes to the proposed budget. And it is somewhat complicated, but actually it's very simple. And as the time comes, as needed, you will know it's coming. And so, so that's where the TSCC comes in.
Right, but the things that I was speaking to, and I think gets to the heart of Roger's comments, in a school district smaller than in a jurisdiction smaller than 200,000 people under Oregon law, the budget committee of a district is comprised of both elected school board members and community representatives. So we would be the equivalent of the community representatives there. In those scenarios, the community representatives have voting authority over the budget, and that is going to be adopted. We as a committee do not have voting authority. So we are unique amongst school district advisory community budget boards in that respect. And so we make recommendations to the district or to the board, and ideally they will follow some of them or at least take them into consultation. However, we are not voting members. And so the tension that is historically and still currently being reflected then is that we do not have the unelected community representation in that, in a voting capacity in that. So what should be our consultative approach to working with the board versus and having that advisory bit versus merely providing written recommendations at a single point in time? Roger's point was that in other districts and more reflecting of broader general policy, it would be a more consultative relationship, and that is what he's looking for. And I hear him saying that he does not feel that's reflected in this proposal.
So can I just mention, PPS is the only school district in the state that is governed by an independent body like TSCC. And the fact that we have to submit our budget to TSCC is it's a limiting factor in how much time we have in the spring to actually work through the budget, you know, once it's been pulled together. And the difficulty is, I'm going to be really blunt here. It's complicated enough for PPS to work through its budget, given all of the time constraints. If we added an additional layer of approval into the budget schedule, it would be extremely difficult to comply with the statutory requirements around actually adopting the budget. So that being said, I mean, you know, I agree. It would be good if we could have a clearer understanding, or not even understanding. I think it would be good if we could kind of work together to figure out a way for CBRC to be to take on a more of a consultative role
Great.
Well, to follow up with Rita's comment, last year, Rita, you'll recall that we had some joint meetings. They didn't turn out to be as robust as maybe was originally intended, but nevertheless, there was joint meetings between the CBRC and the board. So we were simultaneously being appraised or briefed by the staff on budget matters. Later, unfortunately, we got into the situation where the board, in its rightful role of negotiating with a collective bargaining unit, was bargaining having to do with furloughs. And we had a CBRC meeting the day before. It was announced in the newspaper, largely because the bargaining unit had representatives who went immediately to the press and announced decisions of the board. And yet, the very night before, we weren't even included, not even apprised that the board was in any kind of negotiating posture that might affect the budget. And so at the time, that prompted our then board liaison, now current chair of the board, Ailey Lowry, to ask legal counsel as to whether or not CBRC could have been involved. That wasn't the question that ought to have been asked, as far as I'm concerned. The board ought to have told the legal counsel, we wish for our budget committee to be fully apprised as to budgetary decisions that are being made, and how can we best go about doing that legally. And instead, when you put a legal counsel in the posture of say, well, is it legal or not? They immediately come back with no. And so notwithstanding, I was then supposed to go sit in the corner and shut up, and so I did. But and I'm not suggesting that CBRC has a decision-making role. It clearly does not. But it does seem to me that we have a fluctuation among our board as to how robust a relationship they would choose to have with us, with any advisory committee that they have, BAC being another one that deals with the bonding program, is just an example.
Okay. Thanks, Roger. I want to recognize Jennifer. I think you had wanted to jump in prior to Roger, so please go ahead and.
Oh, thank you. So I think there's a lot going on right now with what we're talking about. So the piece I'm wondering is whether our operating guide and how we plan to operate, and how do we tie that to what we want from the board, and or how we want to help our board of directors. So I don't know if this is a motion. I wanted to make a suggestion. I definitely hear a couple of people saying they don't feel that the CBRC has had the involvement all along the process as much as a couple of members, or maybe everybody, I'm not sure, would like to see. What if we had a couple of people put together a specific ask of 2 or 3 or 4 bullet points that we'd like to ask the board for how we'd like to interact with the board this year? Maybe a small group put that together, and the next meeting we come back to, that group can propose it to us and we can talk about it and vote on it, and then submit it to the board and say, we want to help. Here's what we'd like to do. Here's what we'd like to do for you. Here's the info we need to make that happen. but I think I have, it's my second year now, and there's been a lot of conversation about how we haven't been as involved or haven't been involved in pieces that we like. And I think our way there is we either find a way to change statute and change law, or we just ask the board, we'd like to try it this way. Will you work with us on this?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. It's something Judah and I have talked a little bit about just offline, even in the lead up to this first meeting. And so, and we've talked with Director Moore. I think Director Moore, we're working to get a meeting scheduled with you to, in part, talk about this. But I like the suggestion that you made about, and I'd like to invite anyone on the committee who feels compelled and interested in particular in this topic of how we can proactively suggest ways to have a more collaborative and consultative model between Cbrc and the board coming together and doing some brainstorming and coming up with a few ideas that we could present to the committee first and then take to Director Moore and the board. This is so hard. What I want to look to Judah, so I'm sort of looking at you through my screen to see how that resonates with you, because I know you and I had talked about coming together too. But I like this idea of inviting whomever is interested in participating in that conversation and brainstorming. So Judah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's very much in alignment. And thank you, Jennifer. I think that was very well said with some of the things I've been thinking of. In particular, just noting some mental reframing I've had over the summer about how I feel like in the last couple of years, and this last year was obviously, everyone agrees, a very odd year, like not going to be completely representative, indicative of other things, but taking a step back and thinking about the committee and what its goals and purposes are, and recognizing that we are a committee of the board, like we're an advisory role of the board, not the district. We are not like district chartered, we are board chartered. And that really in the board's role as policymakers, because they don't manage staff. They do not manage the district. They set policy for the district. And so we're in an advisory and consultative role there. In a similar fashion, the board is setting policy and advisory and consultative with the district. And so in bringing ourselves in better alignment with the board and focusing on having common goals there, and then working jointly as another set of voices with the district from that perspective, as opposed to, I think when I first joined, we were working almost entirely with the district and very little with the board. I think that brings us better in line with our charter and would better reflect our ability to achieve actual policy changes and policy adoptions that we want to see happen, which is the things I heard from our introductions that we'd really love to see as individuals.
Great. So what I might suggest to move this forward is that that this subcommittee, informal group that is interested in coming together to do this thinking and communicating of ideas back to the full committee when we next meet, either indicate in the chat if you know already that you want to be a part of that, indicate in the chat that you're interested, or email me directly and we'll send a follow-up note to this effect to make sure everyone is clear on the opportunity. Let me and let us know that you're interested in that, and then we'll work to get that group together and we'll figure out who's going to facilitate kind of bringing that group together in that conversation. I would like to suggest that that group also take up as part of the charge. We won't look at the calendar, I don't think tonight, in the interest of time, and also because the calendar as it stands right now, I actually don't think reflects some of what we've talked about in terms of having more opportunities to have collaborative working sessions with the board. And so I don't think it in its current form, we would want to adopt it as it stands. And so I think it would be great for this group to also look at the calendar and think about what a more meaningful set of opportunities for collaboration might look like. We'll obviously have to do some negotiation and figure out what's possible with schedules, but I think it would be great for the group to take that up as well. So I think if that's said, I think what I'd like to suggest next is that we shift away from the calendar itself. We'll communicate our next meeting to everyone. We're at this point in time not scheduled to come come back together as a committee until January. So we were not scheduled to meet again until after the holidays, which, Cynthia, I think is consistent within the past. We have not had a December meeting in the past of this committee.
That is correct.
So we'll make sure that's communicated, but I think between now and then it would be great. And I love that suggestion, Jennifer, again, to like have this subcommittee or group work together on both how we can work together more collaboratively and as well as look at the schedule. So we'll get that moving. I think given the time we have left, I'd love to make sure we hit 2 more things. I think first, if we could briefly, Cynthia, I don't know how much detail we need to go on, or Nicole, just make sure people know about where they can find resources, but I don't think we need to belabor that. I'd love to, Nicole, I think is going to lead a brief overview just to ground us in the board goals and priorities for the coming school year while we're all together. I'd love to do that. And then I'd love to, rather than have kind of the discussion I planned on us having about what we want to prioritize as a committee in the next year, I think I'd like to, as sort of an exit ticket, invite everyone to just use the chat to offer up your ideas, either a priority you want us to include as we think about our topics and focus areas for this year, or a comment about how you'd like us to work together. And I think that we can take that and use it to both build the calendar and our schedule and inform the working group that we just talked about and the priorities that we set.
Could I suggest a mailing list thread instead? Because those will stay around and also are part of public record. These comments will go away at the end of the chat when we close the windows, and we won't have access to go back to them.
Sure. My understanding is, but someone should correct me, is that we do have access to the chat after the fact for note, like record keeping. But Nicole, you jump in and tell me if that's not the case. Either way, I think, Judah, that's a great recommendation, and we can get a listserv started to generate some of that.
We already have the listserv, do we
well,
not?
not the listserv. Sorry, I meant like a thread on the topic.
A thread. Okay, gotcha. Sorry.
I do think people, if you feel comfortable and have something top of mind before you leave tonight, I'd love to just have a quick pulse check on what's on your mind. And I think we can, unless I'm mistaken, I think we'll be able to take the chat, access the chat after the fact. Nicole, is that incorrect? Or Cynthia?
No, that's correct. Yeah. And Nicole, let me help you out here. Terry Proctor, again, my hero. At the end of the meeting, he always able to get me the information, including the chat, so that we have a record of it.
Okay.
So Nicole, just make sure that that Terry, would you please make sure that Nicole gets a copy of that so she can distribute it to the members. And in reference to how to access the information, there is a drive on the listserv for all CBRC members. So those of you who have been around, you know where to go. For the new comers, I think Yasuri will be sending you an invite so that you have access to it. So all the information that we distributed will be in that folder. And that will be your folder that you can store documents and share among each others.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, Nicole, are you up for a brief overview for us?
Sure, I can do that. I will say that Director Moore actually did a fantastic job of covering most of what I was going to cover. So this will most likely be a really basically provide you with the links that you're asking for to the places to go get the information that she was speaking to sort of ground us in the work that we're going to do. So I just want to make sure you guys can see the presentation because I can't. Okay, perfect. So as we work through this, we talked about where we're going, and that is really led by the vision that was PPS. So in June, we formally adopted the community vision. The link here will take you to that vision. It is a lengthy document and has a lot of really good information. I will say that It's an entire presentation that went to the board. It talks about way more than I would go into here, but it will really give you good background on sort of a whole encompassing piece. It's made up of sort of 4 areas that we talked about, which is the core values, the graduate portrait. So what do we want our students to have and be and have the knowledge about when they come out? What do we want it for our educators, which is really everybody at PPS, not just our teachers, but what do we want for them so that they can provide the supports to our students? And then what do we need to actually do to get there, right? So what are the actions that we have to do? So the link is here. There's resolution information included. So, and this is all attached to the agenda, so you can get to it and take a peek and read at your leisure. We talked about accountability, which again was what Director Moore talked about, which is the budget principles. They're linked here as well, and you can read through sort of what we wanted to focus on. This started back in 2016. Yeah, 2016 was actually when they were adopted. And so it talks about, you know, what we want to provide to our students, what we want from our data, the core program and all students. So this has a lot of information on sort of where we started before all of this, right? So this is like the preamble to the rest of it. We also have then the specific goals that they adopted in October, which was the 3rd grade reading and the 5th grade math. Here, oops, that's too fast. The 8th grade student snapshot, and then office the post-secondary readiness that we were looking for. So it has our baselines, and then it has what the 3-year target was originally. I will say that obviously COVID and the pandemic has impacted our learning environment. So I know that there have been discussions about how we measure these against sort of the reality that we're in and what that looks like. So we may end up having more information on some updates to the expectations for those goals, but these are them as they stood originally. We talk about the decision making. So the ResJ lens is linked here. It's basically the tool that we want to push all of our decision making through to make sure that we're really looking at things through a consistent lens. We also have the theory of action, which talks about sort of focusing everything and really helping us to make decisions based from the same place. So we're really being equitable and consistent in how we apply and what we do with our budget for our students and sort of what we invest in. So again, lengthy document here that has a lot of really great information about the lens, the questions we ask in the lens. There's actually, I think Danny came to our meeting last year, a couple of them, and walked us through some of that work, which was really great, and it might be worthwhile to do a similar exercise at some point this year. But I think in that experience, we didn't even make it through the whole lens, and I don't know that I've ever actually been in a one that we've made it all the way through, because there's just so much to it. But it is in one sitting, so it is one of those pieces of information. But you can see sort of the questions that we're applying and the things that we're trying to focus on as we say, hey, we want to do this. What does that mean? And then going through that process to get there. So those are in there, and then we talked about the actions. So these are made up of system shifts, strategies, and then strategic plans, which basically are going to be, you know, mini, like 3-year plans that we like braid together, you know, kind of consistently to create the like long-term path to get to that vision. So we selected 5 system shifts in the budget process last year. And again, as you all know, we had gone through into the proposed with sort of larger expectations for the budget. So we had hoped to make more investments than we actually were able to make as we finally rolled out the budget. But there is links here to all of the strategies. So each system shift has a set of strategies that go, like actions that go with it, that we wanted to align. Here, let's see if I can zoom a little bit. that we wanted to align to. So if we say we want to do a connected and transformative school district, these were the strategies that would support that. And so as we're making decisions, we want those investments to align here. So we work through in the budget process to work with the departments to really say, you want to invest in this, how does this fit within this framework, and how does it support that? So again, there's a lot of information here, so I wanted to provide all of these links so that you have this to refer to and sort of ground the conversations that we were just beginning to have around the budget and how we align to these. And again, you saw some of this with the SIA funding last year with the matrix and sort of here's the investment and here's the system shift and strategy that it aligns to. And we want to continue that work across the budget. So that is really the short version because there is just a lot of information and it takes time to go through it. But if anyone has questions and would like to delve into anything specific, I know we're running a little short on time, so I don't want to take up too much time.
Nicole, would you mind putting the presentation, taking
Sure.
that down so we can
In the
see
chat?
it for any Q&A? Thank you.
Sorry, you wanted the presentation in the chat?
Oh no, I was going to suggest pulling it down now for the Q&A, just so that I can't, at least on my view right now, I can't see everyone when it's up, and it's just harder to see if anyone does have questions or wanted to chime in. Thank you so much for that. I know that was we didn't leave you with much time, and mostly I think we wanted to make folks aware of the resources, and I think we'll delve into these in more aspects of the goals, system shifts, strategies, et cetera, in more detail as we establish priorities and dig into the budget over the course of this year. But I appreciate the big overview. So I'd love to see if anyone, we take just a couple quick minutes if folks have any questions of Nicole while she has the floor beyond what's in the chat. And I'll look in the chat and see if anything concrete comes out of there. Brad, were you chiming in?
Yeah, quick question. So Nicole is mainly going to be our point person in lieu of Cynthia for now?
Yes.
That's correct.
So my successor will be named sometimes in the new year. So in the meantime, Nicole will step in to support the group, and I should be available through the end of this month. So there will be the month of December that Nicole will be supporting the group by herself. However, Claire is always be able to answer tons of questions. And so good old Claire, right?
Yes, I was just going to say, Claire will be, she had another engagement this evening, so she couldn't attend, but she will actually also be in attendance and helping with sort of the engagement process and questions that we have. So I'll help with her supporting the process until a CFO is named.
All right, and for those who don't know, Claire is Claire Hertz, Deputy Superintendent for Finance and Budget. Is that the technical title?
Business
and operations.
Business and operations. Okay, thank you. Also known as Cynthia's boss, but not for much longer.
That's right. But we've known each other for many years, and yeah.
Any other clarifying questions? Obviously, I'm seeing the conversation in the chat, which I don't think are necessarily questions for you, Nicole, but any other clarifying questions of Nicole or Cynthia or any of us about the board goals and
yes, actually, and let's see, we got 8 minutes, so we'll try to make this a small bomb throwing. But the question, one of the major items that we know affects the budget, well, there are two that I know of. One is changes in revenue projections, which I believe there are more coming up. So I was wondering if we could get an outline for expectations on that. And then the other, which is the boundary rebalancing, which is the major factor there, which is a major factor in the budget allocations, which I know is still undergoing the review process by the outside agency. But last I heard, towards the end of the year, there's talk about starting some of that processing early in Southeast. And so I wanted to get an idea about where we were in some of those things, because those are two major things that have a substantial impact on our work.
Can I take that one? So there is already a community process underway to talk about the. So it's not right now. It's not so much boundaries. It's developing feeder patterns, establishing the feeder patterns for 2 middle schools in Southeast, and they've been meeting. I want to say about 6 weeks now. And in fact, even as we speak, they are meeting. So I actually have a conflict. I'm assigned to both of those. So once a month, I'm going to have to figure out which one I can go to. Hopefully we can avoid having but it's probably unavoidable because they meet every week and probably will for many more months. So let me just address the question of the budgetary implications. If we do this right, the budget, there probably will not be significant budgetary implications, at least in the general fund budget. Some of the bond money has been designated for capacity building, and so the bond that just passed for capacity building and construction costs related to middle schools. So my expectation is that there won't be a lot of impact on the general fund budget from the work around reconfiguring Southeast. Does that help?
Hopefully. I mean, the history of any sorts of rebalancing and feeder school stuff in PPS has been fraught. So.
Well, I don't know why you say that.
It's okay. I was never actually part of that committee, and so for that, I'm glad.
Well, I was. So,
I know.
And for those of you who don't know me, that's me being snarky, which I tend to be. But my hope is that this one. Well, okay. Let me put it another way. Kellogg Middle School opens next school year. So there's a drop deadline. We've never had a drop deadline before. There's a drop deadline on coming up with a feeder pattern for Kellogg Middle School. So there will be an endpoint.
Okay, that's great. But no expected budgetary impact. So thank you.
I will also add real quick to your point about the forecast. So the governor's budget comes out the first week of December, and so we will have. So with our next meeting, I would anticipate having a forecast for you that would be based on that. we are working on some projections, which are, I will say, not amazing at this point in time. And so we really want to get more information, because right now we don't have that particular budget, and that will really give us kind of where we can go, or what we're really looking at as we move into the proposed budget process. So we're prepping for all of the things so that we can hopefully pivot quickly and get good information out, so we can actually have input on that information and on the changes that we are hoping to make. So anticipate that as one of the updates for the next meeting that we have, is that we would be able to give you some information on sort of what that forecast looks like.
Great. And if we do, I mean, if that's available early December, it may make sense for us to schedule something in December, so we're not waiting.
That's kind of what I was wondering.
Yeah, I think that would not be, I think it would be more useful for us to have, have that briefing earlier, so that as soon as it's available, so we can start to think about what that means and implications in our guidance. So that'd be great. We're almost at closing, Parker. I saw your note about having one comment, and then I'm going to try and close this out and start a norm at this meeting with being on time, starting and ending on time, which we have not historically done that well.
That norm will be much appreciated, I think, by all of us. But I'll try to make it concise. In that, as Jackson mentioned before he left to go to the meeting that I'm headed to right after this, that Rita also might be headed to, because we're all assigned to that, to the Southeast Guiding Coalition. But the importance of performance measures with any of our recommendations, in working with the district's internal auditors on some pretty unrelated stuff. It's been introduced into my greater consciousness, the importance of performance measures, and certainly something that I'm interested in. I think it's an interesting avenue if the committee would like to go down that, or explore the possibilities of that. But it's certainly something that I'd like to be pushing for, as including some more strict performance measures on our recommendation. Or maybe not strict, but specific, I suppose.
Okay.
I go for strict. Hold your ground, man.
Okay. Sure.
You're not alone on that, Parker.
Okay. Thank you. And Irina, to answer, or to sort of clarify what I meant, in the budget specifically, and also around the implementation of our recommendations, which is ultimately under the purview of the board, but here's hoping.
Okay. Great. Parker, I appreciate that. And I think that's something that I think if there is interest, maybe we can explore at the December meeting if there's a similar sort of approach to establishing a subcommittee that would want to explore that and come up with some proposals and thoughts that can then be brought back to the larger committee. I think that this idea of subcommittees in general may be an effective one for us to pursue this year, to try and get some actual work done in meaningful ways and in a more effective way and efficient way than having us work all together on everything. So yeah, please reach out. Why don't you think about that and reach out, and maybe we can do some behind the scenes between now and the next meeting, work even to get something started.
Absolutely. I'd love to, and I'd be interested in participating on the subcommittee. Thank you, Sarah.
Flash leading, since you had the great idea. That's the reward for having good ideas, is
right.
Carry them out. All right, thank you. Okay, we are 2 minutes past, so I'm going to move us to close. I'm following the minutes that are being taken, and they are excellent. So I don't know that I do need to do much of a recap. I think we have a bunch of action items, which include making sure, number one, that you all have access to all of the resources and documents that we spoke to, that both Nicole and I and Cynthia spoke to tonight. So you'll have access to the Google Drive where all of those are held. We are going to follow up on some of the subcommittees that we talked talked about establishing, which I'm very excited about. So please look out for an email from me that includes the links, me and or PPS staff, that include access to those documents, as well as next steps for, some of you have already volunteered to participate in that subcommittee, but another opportunity to participate. And then we'll also be in touch with the operating guide itself, so that you have an opportunity to look at that at our next meeting. I think we'll want to dig into that in more detail and revisit some of the conversation we started. And we will also importantly be in touch about our next meeting, since it sounds like we're suggesting that we might want to have a meeting in December. And so as soon as we can get that information to you, we will. I think another goal of mine this year is to have much more clarity around meeting expectations when they're taking place, the topics will be focused on, and we know everyone's schedules are quite busy. And so we want to make sure we get on folks' calendars in an appropriate manner. Anything I missed from any of my new co or vice chairs for the good of the order before we close out? Bunny. Oh, and the bunnies. How we have to end with the bunnies. Before we do that, anything else that I missed?
Oh, he's trying to eat the laptop now, but yes. So this is a rescue bunny, not currently up for adoption, but we foster, and this is Twix, and he wishes you all very well.
I think we might have a new norm where we're going to have to end with like some sort of cute pet going off.
Rita, your cat hasn't made an appearance in this meeting.
I know, I'm a little disappointed and surprised by that.
I closed the door, but don't get used to it, because maybe that's...
My German Shepherd has been at my knee all evening, so.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, so much. She wants to know where she is. She wants to see herself. This is my pet. Thank you all so much. We'll be in touch with lots of follow-ups. Please reach out with any and all questions, and we look forward to reconvening again soon. It was really good to see and be with you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
you. Cynthia.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Cynthia, we will miss you.
Cynthia, you will be missed. You're good people.
Oh, thank you so much. Like I said,
Cynthia.
Take care, everybody. My love to you. Take care all. Bye-bye.
You too, Cynthia. All right, bye-bye.